Today we are going to talk about fall prevention. We're going to start off with some sobering facts. So the first fact is that if you have a fall and you are not found within 72 hours, you have a 67% chance that that is going to be a life-threatening injury. So one thing that's very important is learning how to get back up after you fall. Also, making sure that if you can't get up, you have a way to get help. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Another rather sobering fact is that in Canada, which is interesting that I was able to find Canadian statistics because so many times most of the available statistics are American, but it's pretty cool. I was able to find statistics in Canada, which I'm sure are probably around the same. But 60% of non-life-threatening injury-related ER visits are from seniors who've fallen. So that means that the most visits to the ERs in Canada come from seniors who have fallen. And as the senior population becomes the largest part of our population over the years, we can see that if we don't do something about it, that number is going to go up, possibly quite considerably. Now, some good news is that if you do a home safety evaluation, especially if it's done by a professional who knows exactly what to look for. Now, if you want to know what to look for, just go online. And there's a whole bunch of websites that will tell you how to go around your home and kind of checklist what to do. You will have a 20% reduction in your risk of falling. So that is quite considerable if you make sure that just some sort of quick examples are that you don't have things lying around that you could trip over. That at night you make sure that your way to the bathroom is lit. So if you don't have things to fall over, also you make sure that you can actually see your way there. Of course, seniors oftentimes their vision isn't as good. Now that is something that they should get corrected, but if not, you have to make sure that when it's dark and you already have that issue with your vision, you make sure that you have the hallway well lit. So we can see that fall prevention is a pretty important thing, just based upon those sobering statistics. Now, what we can do about it is simply getting strong, all right? The stronger you are, the less chance you have of falling. Now, of course, you also want to make sure that you have some fall prevention things that you do and that you practice them. Now, let's just look at one very simple example. If you just put your feet in front of you, lift your hands in the air, and get up and down off your chairs 3 times without using your hands. Excellent. Okay, so that is a sort of minimum standard that's out there. All right? Now here's something that's interesting about that. If you can already do it, now is the time to make sure that you maintain that ability. All right? So it's just like if you notice that you start sitting down to tie your shoes, right? Your son might come over and ask that that stool be removed and force you to start standing up, tying your shoes. Right? So, and then of course when you practice doing that, you eventually are able to stand up tying your shoes and you move away from that thing that you thought you had to do and you go back to doing something that is much better for you. So if you can stand up out of a regular chair 3 times with your hands in the air, that's very good, and that means that your strength level is decent. What you want to make sure of is that you practice that often and make sure you can do it. You don't want to have it where you can do it now, and then 10 years from now you try it and you can't do it at all. If you had just kept doing it on a regular basis and making sure that you could, that alone would mean that you would maintain that level of strength. And as soon as you noticed you didn't have it, you would take steps to remedy it. But most likely, if you just kept doing it, you would always be able to do it, since you were maintaining that level of strength. So that's just... Another big thing is pride. Now, I'd like to say that this is probably more with men, because we have this idea of being physically capable, and if we start noticing a decline, we decide that it's not happening, we block it out, but actually it happens for everybody. There are many stories of older women as well who refuse to use a cane or a walker because they don't like the way that they look with it. The problem being that if you don't use it, your chance of a fall rises considerably, and that could mean, based upon these statistics here, that your life will change immeasurably in just one moment. And you can go from independent living to having to live in a care home or have someone come in. Then, of course, you're afraid of falling, and you start limiting your activities after that based upon that, which is actually one of the worst things that you can do. But this is a very important idea here, and of course there's the old saying, pride precedes a fall, or pride comes before a fall, and this is actually very true in many ways, but even in just the most literal sense, somebody going out without that aid that they need, they fall and they're actually in an even worse spot. So it's very important to think about that and make sure that you do not allow pride to run your life in that way, because you are definitely going to regret it later if you allow that to happen, without a doubt. Now, what are some things that we can do that will improve our strength, become a bit of a practice, and translate well into not falling via having the strength to do so, and if we do fall, knowing how to get up. It's a very common thing that people fall down, they're lying on the ground, they've never practiced getting up, they haven't been down on the ground for a long time, and that's why they lie there sometimes for over 72 hours. They actually have enough strength if they knew the right way to get up and how to use the angles of the body properly to minimize the amount of strength you need, but because they've never done it and never practiced, they just lie there. And I had a client who lay on the floor for luckily only about 8 or 9 hours, but he was older, he required a walker, he was trying to get into bed, and the bed is high so he could just sit on the side and kind of climb in. But as he was getting weaker, he was having to sort of throw himself on that higher bed, and one day he threw himself with not enough force. He landed only part of the way up, but most of his weight was down the legs, and then as he described it, he slid slowly off the bed onto the floor, and he lay on the floor in his bedroom for 8 or 9 hours until his son happened to come by and visit. And he was living in a subdivision in a big house, and no one could hear him yelling from upstairs in his house. So obviously a well-built house in an area that is quite open. If his son had not come over, who knows, he may have died on the floor. Now, as he started training with me, he learned how to get up using his own power, and then after that, of course, if he did fall, he was able to get back up again. So let's have a look at the Turkish get-up. We're just going to move over here, and I'm going to do a demonstration of it. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to demonstrate the Turkish get-up, and then we're going to talk about why it's so good for both fall prevention and, if you do fall, getting up off the ground. Okay, so what we do with the Turkish get-up, as you can see, is we take a weight that is somewhat challenging. Eventually, of course, we can start with the lightest weight or no weight, as we'll talk about in a minute or two. We take that weight from the floor to standing, and we use the geometry of the body and the most efficient way to move in order to make that happen. Since if you want to eventually be able to do this with a very heavy and very challenging weight, you of course have to have the most efficient movement pattern to make that happen. So, first of all, let's just look at someone who's fallen, all right? Let's say that you fell on your side and you injured an arm. So now you've got your legs, your arm's injured, and you're lying on the floor. If you don't know how to get up, you're in big trouble. You already have this injury that you're worrying about, you're probably freaking out, and you also have no idea how to get up. And you try all kinds of different things, and you're trying to push here, you're trying to sit and you're just not able to get up. If we follow the Turkish get up, we can see that even with this arm not working, I know what to do. So here I am lying on the ground. Okay, so I bring my foot up because I know from having practiced this that I can use the glute, the largest muscle in my body, to help roll me over. I also know, of course, that I can come up to the elbow, so we don't even worry about the weight here, right? This is just moving the body. And of course, if we can do this with a heavy weight, imagine how easy it is to do it with no weight. So here I am here. All I've had to do is, I've had to roll to my side to get my upper body up. Now, all I have to do is just lift my upper body by pushing my arm into the ground. So I'm lifting a very light weight compared to my entire body. Now I've come to here. Then, with my shoulder nice and secure, even if I can't lift my hips up, I have a way of getting my legs underneath me. Now, if I am able to and strong enough, I've got my legs underneath me, I'm in my lunge position, I can stand up. If I do not have the strength to stand up from this lunge, even with pushing with my hands, or I realize that's going to be dangerous because I don't have the strength, and if I try to get up like this, I might end up falling over again. Well, you've already gotten up to here, right? So you're here, we've lifted just the upper body, we've slid the leg underneath. Now, we can crawl somewhere. Let's say that we've installed one of those safety poles on a few walls in our homes, right? Or we find a solid object. We can grab that object. Sorry, I guess the arm was not working. So let me go back here. We're gonna crawl. See, we can still crawl with one arm. Then we can grab whatever that solid object is. We can pull our leg here, and we can use that arm to stabilize, to pull with, and we can stand ourselves up, and then we can go and call and get help. We, of course, can also just crawl our way. If we can't stand up via our legs, we can crawl our way over to the phone or to the door or to a window or somewhere where someone can hear us. So this is the benefit of this exercise. Now, of course, also, as you get stronger and are able to do this with a weight, this is going to help you just with the overall strength to not fall in the first place. Knowing how to align your body under a weight, well, when you just have your body with no weight, you're going to be able to align your body much better. So this is the way that an exercise like the get up and just general strength training is going to help. Of course, the get up is very special because it teaches you how to get up off the ground. And if you do it often enough, you won't forget it, and it will just be something that you can naturally do. And of course, if you practice the get up all the time, or maybe not all the time, but at least a few times a week, you'll always be able to do it. Even if the weight has to go down as you age, you're still able to get up and down off the floor. So that's how the get up helps. Sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, falling in the bathroom, of course, is a huge one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
having handrails in the bathroom that you can easily, either one on this side, one on that side, that you can reach or grasp is really important.
it's very important. So this goes back to this idea of the fall reduction and the home safety evaluation.
Yes.
So the home safety evaluation, it's not just, you know, the fact here is that it will reduce your fall chances by 20%. But also, by installing things in your home, you can also make sure that if you do fall, it's easier to get back up.
Yeah.
So you should install them well before you get to the point that
Exactly.
you could-
Yeah, like after a certain age, you should just install them in your home anyway, right? I mean, in the bathtub, for anybody, even an able-bodied person, having something to grab if you slip,
Yes.
why not just have it, right? I had a client who years ago, she slipped in the tub, and she was in her late 20s to early 30s. So, and she was fit, she was exercising, like, you know, I trained her, I saw what she could do, she was not a weak person.
Yeah.
But that one moment of slipping in the tub, she landed full on the side of the tub with her lower back, and she was out of commission for a long, long time. Now, thankfully, she's all good now, everything's cool, but for a long time, she was out of commission. That was a pretty debilitating injury. Now, imagine if you're a senior and you can't bounce back like someone in their late 20s, early 30s. That could be a life changer or a life ender.
And you're stuck.
and you're stuck. Yeah,
In the bath.
in the bath. Yeah,
It's just horrible.
yeah. So when we look at this home safety evaluation idea, another thing that will do is it will also introduce the idea of putting something around your neck with a button on it that you can push that will alert somebody. A lot of these devices now, they're quite amazing. They have fall detection. So the device knows if you fell, right? Based on whatever the gyroscope, whatever they have in there. So having one of these things is absolutely key. Now obviously, this is not like, for people who are 65 and still in good shape, it's not necessary that they have to have one of those. But as soon as you get to the age where you start noticing that you're weaker and you're sort of seeing the precursors to these possibilities, it's very, very good to get one. This goes back to the idea of the pride precedes the fall, right? A lot of people don't want these things because they're too proud. They don't want to be seen as old and infirm.
Some phones have them, apparently.
Phones have the fall, yeah. Yeah, of course, it's probably like a
It's
similar
pride
thing
that's
that's in the
good
phone.
because it's a phone.
It's a phone, yeah. Now, of course, they have to remember to carry the phone around with them, right? And the other thing too is that at this point, because of the way that the phone technology has happened, not all seniors have a cell phone.
Yes.
Not all seniors want a cell phone, right? So just have to make sure that you have things in place that are going to help, right? And those bars are super key. That client of mine who slid off the bed, I had them put bars in many rooms of the house so that when he got to the wall by crawling, he could pull himself up. Now another sort of side thing that in that situation that is very important too is oftentimes one of the couple is in better shape than the other one, right? So someone has aged a little bit quicker or someone is older already, right? And the issue that his wife had and why she came to me herself was her back was always out because she had to pick him up off the ground all the time. So there was kind of two things going on where because he didn't know how to orient himself to get up, she just basically had to lift up his limp body and haul him up off the ground. And every time she did that, she put her back out. Once he learned how to get his legs underneath himself, then he was able to pull himself up, right? So by him learning to do that, it then assisted her. Once she learned proper lifting and strength mechanics, she was then able to pick up whatever amount of weight she had to of his without injuring herself. Since they were both helping, he was stronger, she was stronger, put the two together, and then of course you're going to have a much lower risk of a problem for either of them. So kind of the final thing I want to talk about here is practicing balance, all right? So strength training, very important. Staying in shape, very important, right? Cardiovascular fitness as well, of course, for all the reasons that we already know. Balance is a big thing too. We want to make sure that we are not falling because our balance is failing. As we get older, our balance starts to fail. That's just the natural decay of the human body. The good news is, if you practice balance, you can maintain it for the rest of your life. But you have to practice it. It doesn't come naturally that it used to. And of course, you could also say why it came naturally when we were younger is that we played more. So you just had balance in your day-to-day life because you were playing. As we get older, we don't play as much, and if we don't have a discipline like a martial art, or a sport or something like that, then we're not practicing balance, and that's very key. So stand up, and let's just do a simple balance test that they recommend for looking at a baseline. We're going to count to 10, standing on one leg, okay? So lift and count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then switch. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, if you had a little bit of difficulty with that, very important to practice it more, because practice will make it better. If you can already do it, keep making sure that you can do it. Maintaining is the best way to go. You don't want to get to a point where you've completely lost something. It's way harder to get it back than maintaining. It's just like weight loss. If you maintain a healthy weight, it's much easier to do that than to be having to lose a bunch of weight and completely change your life and change your habits. Yes?
If at the beginning you can't do it at all,
Mm-hmm.
then is it, I guess it would be useful to maybe use a wall just to begin with, but eventually obviously you want to be, be able to do it.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just like, look at the Turkish get-up. I did the Turkish get-up with 53-pound weight, okay? You could do a Turkish get-up with a 10-pound dumbbell or a 3-pound dumbbell, whatever weight works for you. You could do a Turkish get-up with a shoe balanced on your fists if you can't use the weight to make sure you're maintaining vertical arm and you're doing the get-up properly. You could do the get-up with no weight and just hold your arm up there, all right? It doesn't matter. It just matters that whatever training wheels, if you will, you need to put on to the movement, because you can't do the whole thing, you put those wheels on. So of course, if I can't stand on one foot, hold the wall. And then eventually start taking your hand off the wall, right? For how long can you? Oh, put it back on. And just over time, you have the safety of the wall, so you're not worrying about falling. And then eventually your hand comes off and you can stand like this, right? Now once you can do that, we can take it further by using some exercises that boxers use to maintain their equilibrium in the ring when they get hit. So stand up again. So what we're going to do is we're going to stand on one foot. The boxing's coming back. And we're going to close our eyes. Open your eyes.
Difficult to do.
Yeah, so even myself, I had to tap a couple times.
Yeah.
This is a leg that was affected by the disc injury, and it's still not as good. It takes a bit more practice, right? Now, the other leg, lift the leg up, then close your eyes. If your foot is fighting and wobbling, that's good. Balance is not about staying stock still. It's about staying balanced. So you got to use your core, you feel. You have to use that foot, get more active in the foot, and down. So, right away you can see that you can add a little layer of difficulty, and if you're not able to do it, practice it more. If you don't feel comfortable with your eyes closed, just touch the wall with a finger. And then you'll know that you're not going to fall, and then you can improve on it, you can get that feeling, and then you can take your hand off, and you can maintain. Things that you can add to this, head movement. So, stand on one foot, turn your head side to side. The slower, the easier. The faster, the harder. You can turn your head, you can lift your head up and down. Right? You can go ear to shoulder. And you can also, one of the hardest ones is just roll your head around, standing on one foot. So you can do this obviously on both feet to practice, but eventually just stand on one foot. And you can tap your foot, just tap. This is the thing about balance is, like I said before, it's not about being stock still, it's dynamic. So it's okay to be moving around a little bit, to be bending the knee, right? If you feel you're losing it, instead of just giving up, tap, tap. That little tap will give you balance. Even if you're tapping like this, right? Eventually, the tap slows. Okay? Now, what you're doing there, another great example. Moving the leg around into different positions. Swinging the leg back and forth, swinging the leg to and fro. Right? All of these things mean that you can practice your balance. You can draw the alphabet with your foot. Right? You see what it's all about? It's just keeping that core tight, keeping your body over your foot, feeling your foot. The more you practice this, the better you get at it. As soon as you start losing balance, all that practice, bang, right away your body knows how to orient itself. And most importantly, you don't panic. Because panic equals stiffness. All right? And this is one thing I cannot stress enough about falling. If you fall relaxed, your body will absorb. We have all kinds of joints, right? So if we land relaxed, the same reason why someone asleep during a car accident usually doesn't get as badly injured. Of course, obviously if they're wearing a seatbelt. Because when they're sleeping, the thing happens and the force is going through the body. The awake person, they might grab the dash. Boom, right? The force drives through only their shoulders or maybe just the neck. Whereas if you're asleep, you're relaxed, right? So we want to make sure that with the balance, it's not this, it's just try to be relaxed in that state.
If you
Relaxation, right? But also making sure that your posture is good. Because if we are like this, we don't want to learn to balance with you know, of course, yes, you can practice balancing with poor posture, but you also want to make sure that you understand how to orient your body over your foot. What this means is that if you catch your foot and you start to fall, it won't be you get your foot out, but then everything kept going forward. You want to make sure that if you catch your foot and this one comes out, you understand how to lower your body and get your mass back over your feet again. Yes?
I was just wondering too, like, I think even with just like walking, like quite often, you know, people can get distracted by something and then fall. Is that also like a good thing? Like I've done in physiotherapy before where like if you practice like walking and then choose a point maybe on the wall to the side of you and then track sort of that point on the wall as you're walking forward. Is that also like a good thing to do, sort of I guess training your eyes to sort of, in your brain to sort of know, like, you know, if you're turned sideways or, you know, choosing another point rather than straight forward, that you know how to sort of carry your body as well?
Oh, of course. I mean, this is where everything comes in, right? Getting stronger, getting, you know, fitter in all the different ways you can, controlling your weight to make sure that obviously if you're very overweight, your chances of falling are much higher as well because you have more weight to be carrying around.
Sure your vision is very good, because I think that's another reason why.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier. Yeah, like you're you know, like if you wake up at night, you don't have good vision, and then you don't have lights, you're going to end up tripping. But also, if your vision isn't good in general, even during the day, you're not going to see.
Your depth perception or something is not good. You
of course.
Out.
Your hearing.
Your
right?
hearing.
So when we talked about threat in the talk about habit change, that was one of the sort of basic ideas we talked about, was the sense of sight, sound, smell, touch, right? That if you look at all of those things, your senses, and make sure that those are operating well. So even before you start talking about making a certain habit change of some sort, if you can't see properly, you're under threat all the time. And that's just going to add more and more, right? So taking care of these very basic things, of course, these are our survival mechanisms, right? There's a reason why the lions go after the young and the injured, because they don't have they're either not strong enough, right? Or they are not strong enough because they're young, or they've been weakened by age, so they have an injury, they're limping a bit, they can't get away as quick, their eyesight's not as good, their sense of smell isn't as good, so the predators can get closer before they realize that they're there. And that's that exact idea we were talking about, how if your hearing's off and you have a bit of a sight issue, and then you walk out on the street and you didn't hear the car until it was too late, right? So fixing these things is very important. I mean, there's a lot, but the thing about it is that if you start investigating this stuff, you start realizing that there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do, that you have to take care of.
Balance is good. You've got agility is an addition to balance.
Yeah, so if we're doing strength training, and we're doing good strength training with a good coach, you're going to be getting those things. You're going to be getting training in strength. You're going to be getting training in balance, in agility, right? You're going to be doing, you know, some footwork drills and other things like that. This is why getting fit is so important. Now, as someone who trains mostly boomer to senior age, I include this in all my training. We always have foot speed drills, whatever those drills are. Just being able to step quickly, right? Making sure that if you trip, you can get that foot out. And not only can you get that foot out, but you understand how when that foot comes out quickly, how to balance your body over it. It's useless if you can get it out quickly and you can't balance your body over it. So proper physical training is going to give you most of those things. The ancillary things that you can practice that are very important, obviously balance being a big one. So that comes down to the whole sort of general strength and fitness thing, right? If you're getting good training, then keeping your feet in good shape and strong is also something that should be a part of that. As time goes on, everything gets stiffer, right? Well, if all the bones in your feet and your ankles are getting stiffer, then you're not feeling the ground the same way, right? So good training will include a lot of ankle mobility, foot mobility, right? Making sure that your brain understands that you have these places you can go, and that you're actually able to go there. If that foot is a solid club, then it just becomes a fulcrum, right? Whereas if the foot is malleable and mobile, it actually can spread itself out, it can move around, and it can assist in your balance. This is where proper fitness training is very important, since you will get mobility training there as well. The feet get mobile. You have knee mobility, you have hip mobility, all the joints get mobile, which means that you don't have a bunch of stiff fulcrum points either.
So you're also absorbing some of the energy rather than just bouncing off of your foot. You're absorbing the energy, taking that fall out in effect. There's some lifestyle fall prevention tips that I just want to quickly go over just to make sure we sort of have the complete picture. The first one is, a question is, do I exercise regularly? So we've covered that, but obviously having some regular moderate physical activity is going to make a very big difference in increasing your chances of not falling. Your strength and balance stronger, all right? A sensible balanced diet obviously also is very important. You're going to have higher energy, stronger bones, and also you're going to have less weight to be carrying around to use your strength to help you not fall. The home safety inspection, a very big one. Like we talked about, 20% reduction in fall. So it's very important to make sure that the place you spend most of your time, it's been inspected for safety. Making sure you take extra care. So that includes things like when you get up out of bed, you sit on the edge of the bed for a minute to make sure that you're oriented. So if you do have low blood pressure, it's able to stabilize, you're able to get back up again. It's exactly the same way that if you fall, what they recommend is when you get up, sit down for a minute. Don't just get up and just keep on going. If you've fallen, once you've managed to get yourself up, if you need to call for help, or even before you call for help, just take that time, take that care. You want to make sure that you're not moving too fast and faster than your body can carry you. A good example is running down a hill, right? If you're running down a hill, people reach that point where their legs are going faster than they actually can run, and eventually they're going to fall. We have to make sure that whatever age we are, we understand what the speed is for control, and that we only think about being in control. If we're running for the bus, not running all out with yourself pitched fully forward, so if one little thing goes wrong, you're down your face. You have to make sure that you're running over your feet, and if you miss the bus, you miss the bus. You just have to ensure you're not taking any unnecessary chances. It goes for everybody, but the older we get, the more we have to look at that, because our bodies aren't as strong, we're not able to move as quickly, and we may have some deficits in our sight, our hearing, sense of smell, all of those things. Some of those deficits obviously should be taken care of if they can be, but some of them can't be. And so we also have to make sure that we're not too proud to understand that we have limitations. Because at the end of the day, it's more important to have the longest independent life possible than to be doing one thing. Because I'm sure that there's not anybody out there who has
done too much, had a bad fall, and their life is completely changed, where they are no longer able to look after themselves, I'm sure that running for that bus or going out without the cane because they felt too proud, I'm sure that they are regretting that,
Yes.
without a doubt. Another thing that's recommended too is wearing the right shoes. Making sure that you have a shoe that is not slippery, right? Making sure that you're not wearing an old shoe with worn out soles.
Or
Making sure that in
socks
the
with
winter,
grips.
sorry?
Socks with the grips on them.
Socks with grips, of course, yeah, when you're walking around the house in your socks, yeah. But with the shoes, it's very important that you have a shoe that provides you with some stability. In the wintertime, have a shoe with more grip. Again, if you're younger and more agile, you can get away with more, but we have to make sure that we understand our limitations so that we can live the longest independent life possible. Having your medications reviewed, making sure that your doctor knows all the medications that you're on, that one person knows. Like if you've been prescribed a couple things by different people, that you've gone to either a pharmacist or a doctor, make sure that you know what your medications may cause as far as possible balance issues, vision issues, whatever that happens to be. Because older people tend to be on more medications, they have to understand how those medications are interacting in their body and then take precautions based upon that fact. Discussing their fears with their healthcare provider, that's also very important. If we fall once, we're scared to fall again. So what ends up happening is life gets limited, right? Even if you haven't fallen, if you start to feel unsteady and you're afraid, go out there, discuss that with somebody who knows what they're doing. Either go and get a trainer to get stronger. Go talk to your doctor, tell them how you feel about it, right? If you go to a chiropractor, talk to your chiropractor. If you go to a physiotherapist for an injury, talk to them about that stuff too, about how I'm starting to feel like my world is shrinking because I'm afraid to do these things, and then that professional will be able to recommend things to allow you to go out and do those things more confidently. So it really does, it really is important to make sure to ask for assistance, because the assistance is out there. I know how to train, so that's what I do. But there's a lot of things I don't know how to do, so I go and find an expert to do it, like in my business, for example. Well, it's the same thing with our bodies. You know, I learn martial arts from someone who's better than me because I want to be able to get better myself. Now, the other, the final things that they're talking about here is, do you have a medical alert device? So we talked about that earlier. Either a medical alert device, a way to alert somebody. So you have your phone set somewhere low, for example, so that if you have to crawl over to your phone, it's not too high for you to reach. You may not be able to get up, right? You may have had to drag yourself across the floor because you've injured a leg, right? You may have used the get up to get up, even though that leg is bad, and you've done like a three-limb crawl by 2 arms and 1 leg, right? But now you're not strong enough to be able to stand up, so you have to make sure that in your environment you've got it set up so that you can easily access a way to call for help, whether that's something around the neck. You always have your phone on you because it has either a fall detection device in it, or it's there so you can use it, or you have one of those things around your neck. That's my recommendations, is having a cordless phone. Yeah. Again, it's about what can I have with me that's either with me or easily accessible. Preferably with you, or if not with you, easily accessible. Yeah.
If I fell in the bedroom, for example, my phone's in the living room, so
yeah.
You would have to make
your way.
Right away.
But the thing is if you know how to make your way,
yeah,
you will be able to make your way, right? Mm-hmm. If you learn how to get up and you practice getting up over and over again, getting up is not a big deal. Fear is one of the biggest problems here, mm-hmm. right? Is if you are in an unfamiliar position mm-hmm. and you're hurt, you're going to be scared. You are not going to start thinking rationally about what to do. You're going to revert to what you know how to do. And if you don't know how to do anything, you're going to freeze. That's going to be your threat response, is to freeze. If you know what to do, you just do it, right? Or even if you're a little freaked out, once you calm down a bit, you're like, oh yeah, I know how to get up. Okay, I got to get up, I got to get over there, and I've got to contact somebody. Now, here's just a couple extra things. This is about chronic health conditions that can dramatically increase the risk of falls. So arthritis is one of them. Obesity is another. Functional limitations, so this is if you have a previous injury of some sort. Taking multiple medications. Like we talked about before, the fear of falling, because that's going to give you a reduced activity level, which is then of course going to raise your markers for falling. Hypertension, or so high or even low blood pressure. If you're diabetic, that's another big thing. So of course making sure that you're understanding how to control any of these issues. You have to make sure if you have any of these issues, you've then taken the care to figure out, with my arthritis, with my diabetes, with the medications I'm on, whatever it happens to be, have a plan of how you're going to make sure that those limitations are taken care of to prevent your risk of falling. Yeah.
What's the oldest person that you've trained before?
Oldest person I've trained was...
What is the age of the oldest person?
86.
86.
86, yeah.
Wow. Is that the person that's whose wife had to assist him, or? No,
actually, the 86-year-old was an amazing physical specimen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This was a guy who I have some videos of him. I just tell him get up and up and down off the ground. He could always just get up and down off the ground. He studies karate still. The thing about him though is you could say, oh, he has great genetics. I don't believe that to be true.
Yeah.
He has been consistently exercising and doing martial arts. He has a passion for it. He wants to be that old guy who can do all kinds of things that people can't believe. That's a big part of his personality and who he is. He calls himself the happiest man in the world. So he has that whole thing going for him too, but he always practices. He has never not been physically active. So yes, there are things that I helped him with that he had lost. Like for example, he used to be able to, when I first started working with him, I think he was in his late 70s, he could get down on one knee and he could stand back up very easily, right? But then in later years when I was working with him, he came to me and said, I've lost that ability to get down. So what do? We practiced by raising his knee on some padding to the point that he could get up, and then we just stripped away the padding, and he practiced on his own, and within a very short period of time, like I would say like a month or less, he was able to just drop down, stand back up again, absolutely no problem, perfect posture, perfect form. So there's another great example of practice and continuing to be fit is pretty big. Yeah. All right, so another thing that's very important to do, I believe, is to practice falling. So why a lot of times people get hurt when they fall, or more hurt, is that they stiffen up. If you haven't been on the ground for a long time and you haven't practiced falling, it's terrifying. The minute it happens, your body goes into fear mode. And what happens? You stiffen. So now when you land, instead of your body being able to absorb, like we talked about earlier with the person sleeping during a car accident, you're going to land on a stiff piece, and of course all the force is going to go into that piece. You're going to break your arm, break your shoulder, break your hip, or whatever. What of course you have to realize is that if you do fall, it's going to hurt. It's just like, no matter how good you are at martial arts, you have to understand that if you get in a fight, you're going to get hit probably. You're probably going to get hurt, no matter how good you are. It's very important to remember that. But when you're practicing falling, you obviously don't want to get hurt. So what I recommend people do is, in this case, you're going to use the mats in the gym. But what I've seen by this really cool guy, I think he was in his 80s or 90s, and he would just go around to seniors' homes, and he had this big air mattress that he would blow up, and he would just show how he could fall. And he would just practice falling on the air mattress. So that's what I recommend. Go to Canadian Tire, 20, 30 bucks, get an air mattress, and you can practice falling on an air mattress. So basically what he did was he would just kind of stand there, there's the air mattress, and he would fall. And you can see he would just let himself roll. Or he would stand like this, and he would fall backwards and stand back up again. Learning how to do this is very important. You just start with baby steps. So for example, if I want to learn to fall backwards, start on your haunches and fall backwards. You have to learn how to tuck your head. Why people end up hurting their brain when they fall is this happens. It's like a whip, right? You came off of the heels, you went through the legs, you came down, and then the final thing, at the very end, traveling the fastest, crack, your head. If you're not practiced in falling, you're going to fall and hit your head. Of course, if you pass out, it's going to happen, you can't do anything about it. But if you're conscious and you fall, no matter what way, like even if you fall sideways, boom, boom, crack, you hit your head, right? If you practice lifting your head, so when you're practicing your falling, so say you're just in this position, you're just practicing a fall on the side, relax, keep your head up, okay? And use the momentum to roll yourself out of it. In almost every case, even from standing, if I fell, I can roll, keep my head up. The rolling will, of course, dissipate the force more. If you practice it when it happens, you're going to revert to what you practiced. As you're going down, your brain is going to know, oh, I've done this lots of times. You know it's going to hurt. You just have to accept the fact that it's going to hurt. There's nothing you can do about it. But what's going to hurt more? This, bam! Right through the shoulder, crack. And then, oh, that's it. Or land and relax and roll, keeping your head up. I didn't do a very good job. Keep my head up there. So relax and roll, and you practice keeping your head up and away from the ground. You can even practice bringing your hands to your head. This is the most important thing to protect. All this other stuff, you can live with a little bit of injury. You don't want to have to live with an injury to your brain. So I cannot stress enough that you practice falling. Like I said, starting from the lowest position, eventually to a high position, practice falling backwards, tucking your head, and either rolling out of it or just allowing yourself to roll that way. Practice what happens if you fall forward, rolling yourself out of it and staying loose, keeping your head up. If you can practice that from the earliest age possible, you are going to have the best chance of not hurting yourself when you fall. A really good example of that is skateboarders. They say in skateboarding, it's not if you fall, it's when. If you're practicing tricks like going down some stairs or sliding down a handrail or something like that, you're going to fall. And skateboarders fall more often than they make a trick, right? They probably fall like 80% of the time, especially trying something really hard. But they know, skateboarders know how to fall. And because they know how to fall, they're relaxed with it. They fall a lot. Of course, they do oftentimes get some bad injuries, but not as often as you think, because they understand how to fall, they understand how to stay loose and relaxed, and their injuries are minimized by that fact.